It's fire-based EMS, so of course their ambulances are going to be red.
Welcome to another episode of the EMS Wizard podcast. I am Mark Casey, and I have a slew of people with me on the show. A lot of great people. One specifically sticks out.
The
Correct.
best people.
But just gloss over me and go to the guest
It's not a
Yeah.
dean.
Let's talk about
It's not a college coordinator.
our guest. I don't require an introduction, but thanks, Mark.
But I think it is an assistant chief of Pender EMS and Fire, Chief David Dudding with Pender EMS and Fire. Welcome to the show, David.
Thank you. Thanks for having me, guys.
So for, the people that's not from Southeastern North Carolina and very familiar with Pender EMS and Fire, tell us a little bit about where you work at.
So the county's kind of unique. We cover two sides. We have a coastal region, which anywhere houses between 40 and 50,000 people. And then the county is split on the other side by I-40 with a rural region. On that rural region, it's anywhere between 10 to 15,000. So it's kind of a unique environment that we get we get the whole rural side and we get the coastal side of everything. We're a combination agency. According to VFIS, we're the largest combination fire and EMS agency east of I-95. Something I didn't know till just recently when we met with those guys. But we have about 245 staff, and we have that combination between 13 stations. So pretty busy. We run about total between fire and EMS. We run about 21,000 calls a year.
So a very unique agency, by comparison to the majority of EMS, what we see in North Carolina, specifically. So, one thing, where you and I actually met is whenever I become training officer here in an agency, adjacent to you. And I reached out to you like, hey, I'm the new guy. I'm not 100% sure what I'm getting into, but I would like to meet with you and chat with you, try to learn a little bit more about, what the job's like and everything. And, I think that just really attributes to that networking piece that we talk about in the officer program and how important it is to be able to make those connections with people and learn from each other. And David, I don't know if you know that, but there's a lot that you've contributed to us, and you might not have ever known that how much of an impact that you've made just in some of the conversations that you and I have had before. So, just to be able to show that importance of people being able to connect whenever they're promoting into those positions, I think is really important. And is there anything you would like to kind of share to kind of echo some of that?
Yeah, when I first started in EMS, it was 96, 97. And there was kind of when I came in, it was a very thick skin, we eat our own kind of mentality. And, if you didn't get off the ground running, then there wasn't really anybody to pick you up and help you. It was very competitive back in those days. I can remember working for a convalescent agency right out of high school, just fresh with my EMT, making $5.85 an hour. And begging for a position in EMS, but they were so competitive that there was limited slots, and you had to be the top of your game. And it's one of those things I still preach today when I teach, at the community college level, whether it's EMT or paramedic, is, you can either be good at your craft or be a master at your craft. And I don't want the person that's just good at their craft that just made the 70. I want somebody that's a master at what they do. And so it's kind of a creed that I preached moving through. And even when in the leadership, it was kind of one of those people that you didn't want to leave someone behind. If you saw somebody struggling, you picked them up. And there weren't a whole lot of mentors very early in my career to help me. And I made a lot of mistakes, things that I wish I could go back and fix. And some things I don't, because they're where I am today. But when I see other people in leadership roles that I've had, I try to get in there as early as I can and try to help them, because, if you don't have to reinvent the wheel, don't do it. There's a lot of things out there, a lot of pitfalls that you'll run into, because in certain parts of our job, there's not a lot of guidance. I mean, there's just not. You kind of feel things out as you move through, but you kind of pick those people up and help them. And when you and I first met, Mark, I could tell you were where I was a few years before that. I was trying to learn. I was making a lot of mistakes. I was weighing on the state trying to help me with some things, especially in recertifications. And we were moving our status, our credentialing status at the time, from CEI to AEI. there was just a lot of stuff on it. I didn't want to see you make those mistakes either. So, and plus, man, I've never understood the mentality of not wanting to help your fellow brother. You know, I mean, counties, we're in EMS, we're just like the military and branches, you know, we're one county away, but we seem like we're in total different countries, you know, and
Yeah.
and like that with us. It was always like, what can I do to help you? And what can you do to help me? And I extend that to all of our other agencies as well. And I teach, you know, the officers in our agency to act the same way. You know, there were times where you go to the hospital and you've made your cot at the ER, but you see other agencies sitting there and they're struggling. So you go over and make their cot for them too. And that's just something that you don't see much of anymore, but, you know, something that I preached a big mentality for. And you know, it's a character thing. That's how my parents raised me. And I preach it everywhere I go now. So that was where our friendship started. And I'm glad it's made it to where it's at today. And, you know, everybody I meet, I try to do the same thing.
So you've been in this a while, about as long as a lot of us on here have been, going back to the 90s. And so what would you say that drove you to where you've been? I heard you say you was an instructor, probably have training background, training officer type stuff, if you're talking to Mark about those things. So that leads me to think, well, it leads me to ask the question of what motivated you? You've already talked about a lot of key things that we discuss on here. And so one of the questions I have was, or is, were you motivated by somebody because you came up under them and they were doing it the wrong way and you were like, hey, I want to do better than that? Or were you mentored the right way, or a good way, and you had this motivation of I want to be just like that person? Or was there a blend of that?
There was a blend. I had positives and negatives from different leaders, you know, early in my career. And the one thing I decided I was going to do real early on is get rid of the negatives and focus hard on the positives. And that was kind of easy to do. And I was the guy I've always been the person to go with the flow, not really make waves in the water. You know, you're in your position for a reason, and I'm going to listen. You know, do as you do in Rome. And that was me as a young medic. But I also was able to focus on some goals and learn the bad habits away from the good habits. And I had some fantastic mentors, people that to this day still work in the industry that I will call. Even in my current position in administration, you know, they're retired or they're still on the job. I'll call them and say, hey, I need your help. And what do you think of this? And I don't have that problem at all. But, you know, that drove me. It gave me I really wanted to teach what I had learned in my craft, some of the mistakes I had made, the positives. And I wanted to see a generation of EMS to where people took care of people. And I also saw some instructors early in my career that, especially in the college levels, that were subpar. And I remember thinking, man, how am I going to get through this class? There were several times in my paramedic class that I wasn't sure I was going to make it. And I think every paramedic goes through that, especially when you get into cardiology, because it hits you hard and fast. But that was an area I fell in love with. Cardiology is probably my favorite thing I enjoy teaching. And I was fortunate to have a really good instructor through that. So I took away the negatives and took the positives, man. And I really just wanted to push that forward as I went through and taught. And when I teach classes today, that's my thing. I still have I'm not in training anymore. I miss it. It's my heart, and I really put a lot on those guys because that's where I came from before I was promoted to assistant chief. I came straight out of training as a division chief. But I still will have students that can't get over that hump in school, or they failed their first attempt at the test. And so they'll come sit with me in the office for about an hour and a half, and I'll just drill them. And we'll start from the basic knowledge, and we'll work our way through all the domains and go through everything I can think of. And I'm not giving them the answers. They're giving me the answers. I'm just getting them set in the right direction. And we've been real fortunate. I see the aha moments, the people when it lights off on them. I see where they get it, and I see where they're struggling. And so it's just kind of it's still a passion I've got. I love to train. I love to get in people's minds. And again, I'll I'll token the phrase, be a master at your craft, man. And in this business, we're not out there grocery shopping. We're not out there putting boxes together. We're dealing with human lives. And what you do at that moment could impact the rest of their life and yours. So it's a pretty big deal for me. And I put a lot of weight into it.
So fire-based EMS, and you touched a little bit, largest department east of I-95. And so there are some amazing things when you have fire-based EMS, and there are some challenges. But the average bear might say, I don't know what fire-based EMS looks like, or that mixed fire and EMS. Can you talk a little bit about how y'all are doing that at Pender, and some of the things that you love about that?
Yeah, I didn't know how it worked either, to be honest with you. We went through a merger in 2012 where the county asked us, we had a couple of the volunteer fire departments that were struggling and a couple that were doing okay. And the county asked us to basically create a merger with them. We were just only doing EMS and rescue at the time. And so we picked them up, brought them in, and started at the ground level. And it's been pretty cool. I'm not going to lie to you guys. All of our firefighters, our firefighter 1 and 2, they have their TR VMR. They also have to have their EMT certifications, but a lot of them have moved into their advanced EMTs, or they've continued to grow. They first respond on everything that we would do in the EMD system as a Charlie, Delta, or Echo call. They get a lot of experience. We do a lot of medical con ed with them. I joke with those guys a lot, and they know it. I tell them they trade in their fire gloves for the blue Nitrex gloves a lot more than they want to. But it's a good system. It's a lot to keep up with because there's standards on both sides, especially from the management point. You're having to keep up with NFPA and North Carolina Office of EMS, and sometimes that gets a little taxing. And especially with things that have been changing a lot lately in the cancer initiatives and a lot of the updated gear. And oh, by the way, a new Pierce fire engine is almost $1 million now. Versus your 325,000.
Wow.
So there's a lot of challenges, but I've enjoyed it. I've really enjoyed the blending. Our guys get along real well together. When we do training, when we do meetings, they all come in together at the same time. That way we're creating the same environment that they have out in the field. And the cohesion is seen all the way around. So it was a challenge in the beginning, but it's been pretty cool. And I'm real excited about the way the future looks in Pender as far as, us keeping that model and moving forward. It was something 20 years ago that I never thought you'd have seen in Pender County, but here we are.
And you alluded to your network, and that being an important piece. Is that something that preceded you? Like, was that a mentor passed down to you saying, "Hey, make a network," or is that just something that you said, I really want to be a network? Because you mentioned being the self-initiator while making up the stretcher and go and do those things and pass those on. Is that something you were taught, or something that you seen yourself that you wanted to pass on and sort of create that culture?
So when I got in the training officer position, there was really no communications between the training officers in the region, and Mark can attest to that. And so one of the things that I created was a regional training officers coalition, and that all the training officers, New Hanover, Pender, Brunswick, Duplin, Onslow, we would all get together once a quarter, and we would rotate between stations in which we met. We'd have lunch, we'd sit down, we'd talk about training, and what can we do to help each other out, because the last thing you want to do is fight each other. The last thing you want to do is pull employees from each other and peck back and forth. You want to have a good relationship, especially in the training realm. And when Mark was training officer, I was training officer, and we had some other training officers in the region. We had a daggone good setup between all of us. And I don't think, Mark, we missed a meeting very often. I mean, we even got the community college, Cape Fear Community College came in a few times. The state office of EMS started coming into our meetings. It really did grow. And then, of course, we had the great COVID hit of 2020 where everything shut down. And the new training officer with us right now, Captain Donald Brown, he is something that he's bringing back is the whole regional coalition. But it was just something that there was a shortfall, and we needed to talk about it. And, if you're not talking, what are you guys doing? We're just keeping secrets to ourselves. In the education community, especially in North Carolina, it's not something you do.
So you touched a little bit on having, you share your knowledge. You want to teach others what you have and the experiences that you have. How do you deal with the people that have been in for as long as you have, if not longer, that are the complete opposite of that, who exude this great skill set, but are just grumpy and are just like, I'm in it. How do you change that mindset? How do you impact that?
What, you mean?
Because I'm sure you come across that.
You mean we've actually got those people in EMS? You're crazy.
Not at all. We don't have those. We don't have those at all.
What's the term we call for that? Is that salty or burnout? What are we calling that these days?
I think we're calling it salty these days.
Yeah.
Burnt
Pretty sure we're calling it salty.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, I mean, you're right. I mean, it happens. You see them, man. It's all the time. And I was told very early in my career the shelf life of a paramedic was anywhere between 5 or 10 years. After that, your back, knees, everything starts to go. And with the old aluminum Furno stretchers we had, that was the truth. But you do. You get your salty ones, and I've got them. Everybody's got them, but it's adjusting to their personality and understanding where they're coming from. A lot of these guys have seen a lot of things, and they've got things to benefit you. They've got things to offer. I've had some of the saltiest paramedics I've ever seen in the world. They came in, they just wanted to do their job and go home, and that was fine. I've had some other ones that we could kind of career redirect, motivate, and they became some of the best field training officers I ever had. It's just finding their motivation, finding what they do, what drives them. Why do they want to be there? Because that's the first question I'll ask somebody in management now. When they're grumpy, when I'm hearing complaints on them, maybe see a write-up come across my desk, I'll bring them in. My first question is, why do you want to be here? Because there's obviously something motivating you to check in at 8 a.m. every morning, put your uniform on, drive, get in that car, and come get on an ambulance. Why do you want to be here? And the answers vary, but I think it puts them in a perspective where they got to stare at a mirror and see where they're looking at. Because, I mean, and at some point, we're all going to get to where we say, what is our expiration date in this job? When do we need to walk away? And I hope that's going to be many years down the road. But it's just some of the strategies that we try to, employ with these guys. And they're remember, they're salty for a reason. Something got them there, whether it was bad management, whether it was bad calls, PTSD, or just not. And I'll tell y'all, 99% of the time, what I find in management is if they've got a problem at work, they got a problem at home. Something at home is driving them in, especially when you're talking 24-hour shifts where these people come and they live at a station, sometimes more than they live at home, especially when they're working these overtime shifts. 9 times out of 10, you can find something that's going on at home, and you can relate that back and try to fix that, and you get a better employee back at the end.
And I would almost say that might even be a universal approach, like whether we're talking about the burnout, salty medic kind of perspective of why is it you want to be here. I think that's also probably a way to approach the newer generation coming into the profession. Why is it you want to be here? What is it that motivates you? There was a reason you made the decision to go to the first night of EMT school or to make that decision to apply for this job. What was that decision? And however, the wide variety of answers that we've probably all heard about why someone would, want to put in for a job or start EMT school, there's something to build off of. And I think that's where, as EMS leadership in present time, we have to acknowledge that, it's not because, there were generations of fire and EMS before them. So they just kind of found that interest because of their family, or they got into that interest because of their friends. There's probably a wide variety of those reasons now. And I think as leadership, we have to acknowledge that wide variety that's probably coming in and then find a way to build upon that. Right. So with the new generations coming in, David, what's some of the things that you found that's been beneficial to you to kind of help build those newer people? Because I know you guys have started an AEMT academy not too terribly long ago, and I think it has you've completed one academy so far, right?
Yep, completed 2 of them.
Completed 2 of them. Oh wow, yeah. So where's the success in that? What's some of the tricks of the trade you could share from that?
Well, I'm fortunate. I have a 14-year-old at home, and he keeps me grounded with the newer terms and technology and everything going on. I have learned some slang terms that I didn't even know what they were. So when I hear these kids walk in at 18 or 19 years old into an orientation, it doesn't surprise me anymore. It used to. I'm the guy that memes came out, I said Mimi. I didn't even know what that was. So, and my entire advanced EMT class laughed at me, but that's okay. Yeah, we're, one of the programs we pushed out is what we've called the Earn to Learn campaign. With the paramedic shortage, and I don't even call it a paramedic shortage anymore. I call it an EMS shortage, because we're seeing just as much shortage in providers from the EMT level all the way up. So the program we've launched, basically, what we do is the person comes in, they go through an agility test, they go through the interview, we vet them. If everything passes, we get their scores. They have to take the placement test for the college. And then through our local college, we will put them through EMT school, and we'll also pay them $15 an hour while they're taking EMT. We pay for all their books, all the uniforms, everything associated with their education. They pay for nothing. And then at the very end of class, we guarantee them a job. The only thing we're asking them to do in return is sign a 2-year contract. We've done that with EMT, and we've done that with advanced EMT, and it's been very successful. We filled up just about every class, and we're about to launch a new one right now. That does bring the challenges you spoke of, Mark. We get some very young candidates to come in, and I kind of laugh, and I'll have a little laughing moment with you guys here. I had one the other day, and I was showing him, he didn't believe I'd been in EMS for a while. So I showed him an actual physical picture of me on one of the old New Hanover trucks. And when he looked at the picture, he tried to zoom in on it with his fingers by doing this.
Oh wow. That's
Yeah. 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 So that's kind of our new generation, guys. I mean, technology's at their hands everywhere they go, and we're adapting to that. But it all goes back to the learner. It's not really about me; it's about how they learn. So you try to, you'll have a class of 15 kids, and every single one of them may learn 15 different ways. And you try to go back and you try to figure a way to connect to them. The one thing I do is make sure everybody stays engaged, because I've seen too much in the education field where phones are allowed in the classroom or computers are allowed in the classroom. Mm-hmm. And while that may seem like that kid's taking notes on his computer, 9 times out of 10 he's on Google and he's on Amazon looking for something else. So I want to make sure that they understand when I'm there that they also get my full attention. I'm getting their full attention, and I think it's just bringing them in. But this new generation gets a bad rap a lot of times, and I'm not saying it's not completely undeserved, but I think that us as educators at the same time and managers have to find a way to adapt to it, because that's the way people did for us. I'm sure people said the same thing about our generation. My generation was the first generation that came up that didn't have internet. That I had an electric typewriter, and before that I had the typewriter with the arms slammed up on the paper back and forth, and I thought the electric typewriter was the coolest thing in the world, but it had autocorrect on it. And then I remember getting my first compact computer with AOL. So, I mean, I can imagine what the generation thought about us then. So I try to reflect back on those kind of things and, make sure that we're not missing something. And I try not to hold everybody to the same standard, as far as the education piece when it comes to how they learn. At the end, we're going to hold them all to the same standard on what they learn, but how they learn is a different story.
You just said a whole lot of things there that Mark and Kathia did not understand, just for the record.
What?
Typewriter
That
was
is
the
not true. Wait a minute.
before
I learned on a
computers.
typewriter.
I had a typewriter.
Yeah.
I had to go buy AOL on a CD-ROM.
I'm
That's
talking
right.
about
I had to
compact
turn in
and
book reports on
AOL.
a floppy disk. Okay, like I get it.
I was in the
speak
8th
your
grade whenever I
language.
learned how to type in MS-DOS. Okay. I remember that.
Right, like
The
Bless
Oregon
your heart.
in middle school or
The
elementary
Oregon
school.
Trail.
Yeah.
yes, that was a great game.
Loved it. I've wasted so many hours on that game.
So many.
So, David, you talked a little bit about your academies. How do you keep everyone continuing education updated? How do you educate, meet with, ensure that everybody's receiving the continuing education that they need?
So we have 2 different ways. We have we have an online platform that allows everyone unlimited access to well over 500 different classes that they can take. We will assign assignments. We'll assign 3 assignments every single month, and that gets them their 36 hours every year for the Rescue Association, so that they make sure that they're meeting their minimum requirements. And then we also will do quarterly module training where we bring in all staff. We hold a shift meeting. It's mandatory, and then the shift meeting will last about an hour. And then we do 1 to 2 hours of training, and we have mandatory topics we hit every year. We do an airway rodeo. We'll do a patient assessment or sim lab. And then there's a couple other ones that we try to do, like driving. We'll do a full driving. We go out to the college. We do a driving pad. We do the VFIS driving setup where they have to back, serpentine, everything, just to make sure that they understand it. So we do the dual approach, the hybrid, the online and the in-classroom portion. And we make sure, I always tell my guys that, if they're not getting content, it's their fault, because we're giving them every single opportunity to get it.
Now, you said those were mandatory, though, correct?
Yeah, the person ones are mandatory. And then the ones
Really?
we are optional every month, but it's basically what I used to say is when you get to 4 years and and I tell you you're up in your 90-day window for recredentialing, don't sing me a sad story, because we've given you every opportunity to get there.
Is there a reason why you don't make that portion mandatory?
So we used to have it mandatory a while back, and what I ended up finding out was that I was chasing more people down to try to get it done in the very end than I was accomplishing the mission. I found myself getting off on tangents, going after that instead of doing other things that I needed to do that were a little more important. And it's just the nature of the beast. People are, human beings were a little bit lazy by habit. And take, for instance, if I have a fireman and he's got all this training to do this month and he's out doing hydrants, he's running calls, he's doing everything, probably the last thing on his mind is to get these 3 hours knocked out. And it's an honest mistake. He doesn't want to not knock them out. He just forgets to do it. Well, then when you're talking 250 people and I'm the training officer, I'm chasing down probably 40 or 50 each month. It gets to be a daunting task. So it was easier for me to back off of it a little bit and make those suggested. Now, I will say that since we started doing those things, the battalion chiefs that run those shifts, they stay on their guys pretty hard. And it's made it a lot easier for me not to have those things mandatory because they're getting them done. I've had very few cases in my last few months. I was training officer. I had very few cases of people popping up for re-credentialing that didn't have any hours done. They were all ready to go and rock and roll. And our new training division officers, they're having the same luck. I haven't heard any problems out of it. So kind of one of those trial by error things, but it got to be a little tasking. I always said I wished I had about 2 or 3 people to help me and one person just to do nothing but Con Ed.
I mean, there you've got those people that are like, what's going on this month? Let's train, let's do the Con Ed. And you've got those are like, what's Con Ed? I didn't know I had to get that.
I did a little funny thing. You know, I decided I'd mess around. We had the old CenterLearn platform back in the day. And I'd made a Con Ed, and it was 1 hour Con Ed, and it was literally listed as nothing. That's what I put on there. It said nothing. And they got a certificate doing nothing. And I just wanted to see how many people did it. And it was kind of funny because my go-getters, the people you're talking about, they thought it was hilarious. They were posting them all over the station and nothing for 1 hour. And then I had people that had no clue what I was talking about. And that kind of gave me an idea. All right, how many people are really looking at this stuff and how many people aren't? So just kind of a reverse thought of trying to get your stuff out there, but also letting the staff know that I got a sense of humor. You know, I get it. I've been on the truck. I tell people today that, you know, part of the advantage of being in a management position is that I've ridden that seat. I've been on a fire truck. I've been on an EMS unit. The complaints you're telling me that you have today are valid because I had those same complaints at some point in my career. So that was kind of my methodology and why I did what I did with that.
You haven't forgotten where you came from.
I try not to. I really don't, because I'm telling
you,
I've seen those leaders that do, and there's no crystal palace for EMS guys. You don't sit at the top and stare down. You got to be. I know that sometimes in management we got to have a 15,000 foot view. But the minute you lose track of what the ground pounding guys and gals are doing in EMS, you've lost your agency at that point. That's just my personal opinion.
So there's got to be a middle ground. You're talking about the training piece, and when what to me sometimes feels like another lifetime in the fire department, we would I don't know, hypothetically we might mow the grass, and all of a sudden that's an hour of small tools, small equipment repair. If you're you go to the grocery store to get dinner and you come back and that's 30 minutes of driver training but in EMS, it's this, you have to have your level 2 and what is this crosswalk for? And I feel like it's fire service training is very easy. And sometimes EMS is very difficult, and there's got to be some happy medium. How do we, if you were king of the world, how do we get that happy medium between the two?
Well, I tell you, you bring up some good points. And even hitting where you're at, I'll take it a step further. I'd like to see where the EMS instructor and fire instructor credentials are on a level playing field. We go through just about the same things, but we're treated in different realms. And that's aggravating. I mean, and I'm also in law enforcement, and I'm gonna tell you what, that's one thing that I've seen. You know, the sheriff's office wanted me to go and get my basic law enforcement office or the basic law enforcement instructor, and nothing in EMS was honored. And everybody that's had their level 2 instructor understands how hard it was to get to that point. So you can look at all 3 of those values, and just specifically speaking in fire and EMS, I don't know, because the cultures are completely different. And that's not a bad thing. It's just the way it is. Fire's been around for, several hundred years. EMS hasn't had that long. And so we're still the new kids on the block, and we're still learning, we're still moving up. And it's, again, not a bad thing, but it's just a cultural difference. And when you run an agency of fire and EMS, you see the 2 distinct cultures. And I support them both because I've been in both of them. But to get to those same levels of training, it's tough, because I'll have my firemen that say, hey, look, we're out here at the training tower. We're going up and down these stairs. And I've asked EMS to go clean the bathroom twice, and they still haven't done it. Or I'll have my EMS crew that's run 15 calls in that shift, and they're just completely taxed. And the fire crew left the bathroom for them, but they've never had any chance to do it. Fire didn't run a single call that day. So there's a balance, but you got to also remember the cultural difference between the 2. It's a rare thing. And if you've not experienced it, it's very different. It took me a little while to understand that.
step by step, we'll show them the right stuff.
Oh God, I was waiting for it.
I caught that reference.
Although right stuff is playing in my head whenever you said that. So just
You know,
Uh,
and I'll plug my sister in on this. I remember her. You guys remember the 900 numbers you used to have to try to call, and you could talk to the band members would talk. I remember coming home one day from school, and my sister had
I don't know anything about that.
like had run up like 30 minutes of calling one of those 1-800 or 900 numbers to talk to the new kids on the block.
yeah.
It ended up being like $100 phone bill.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to ask my wife about that one. She probably knows.
Nickelback.
Yeah.
Nickelback
Oh, yeah.
has never done that.
Nickelback.
They don't do that.
So, David, there is one last thing I wanted to kind of touch on a little bit. And I think this has been a conversation that's been had statewide. And a lot of people have brought it up. A lot of people have had a lot of conversations about it. But the non-traditional paramedic practice setting and kind of how that has affected the profession overall.
So, honest opinions, it's killing EMS, and I'm going to tell you why. COVID, the nursing shortage hurt real bad, and I don't know if everyone in the state is seeing it the same way. It certainly seems that way. However, I understand that the non-traditional practice was made for medics that were getting old in their careers, that were having leg issues, that needed to be somewhere else. And that was a great exit off the ambulance for a career for them. But what we're seeing today is that you're seeing brand new paramedics coming out of school, and they're going straight to the ER or a doctor's office. And they're not even being treated as a paramedic. They're being a certified medical assistant or a CNA. They're going to dental offices and starting IVs for sedation, which is a whole separate topic, because is a dentist a medical doctor? Can they actually practice in those fields? I don't know the answer to that, and I'm not sure anybody does, but I sure would like to find out. But the point I'm making is that paramedics and EMTs and AMTs were meant to be on ambulances. They were meant to answer 911 calls. They were meant to go out in the field. And when they're being poached, so to speak, straight out of these colleges and going straight to other career fields in these other places where they're not being paid what they should be, in my opinion, it's killing EMS in general. For example, I went to an EMT class to recruit, and before I could even get in there had already been 2 medical clinics that had been in there to recruit ahead of me. And they were going to offer them nothing more than just to be a glorified CMA. These were paramedics and EMTs and advanced EMTs. And I don't really know the answer to it, but I know that there's the spirit of the law and the letter of the law. And the spirit of the law was this is not what we were supposed to be doing. But there's really nothing that kind of dictates what they can and can't do. I don't know what the future of EMS is going to be if we can't get enough providers out there. But when they're being pulled in other directions, it's not helping. I know that the nursing shortage hopefully won't last forever. I've seen paramedics go into ERs and then be kicked out of ERs because the nurses are back. I don't know what that trend's going to look like. COVID hurt a whole lot, but I know that I haven't met an agency yet that doesn't have staffing issues. And every time we attribute it to it, it's because if I can go work in a clinic from 8 to 5 and be in my bed every night, well, yeah, I'll take a little less money for that. And oh, by the way, all I'm doing is taking blood pressures or weighing people, or I'm not really doing my full job of scope. But again, that wasn't the spirit of the move when the state did what they did. And I just think that until this thing gets figured out or the shortage is in, it's just going to continue to hurt EMS. And I know we've seen a lot of it. And I've spoke through multiple other training officers, directors, assistant directors, and they feel the same way. In fact, we just took a trip just recently to South Carolina because we're going to be carrying Nitronox kits on our truck. We're one of the first in the area to do that for pain relief for the advanced EMTs. And we went to an agency in South Carolina and met with them, and their stories were 15 times as bad. They said they've been in this shortage for about 10 years now. And this particular agency was a very well-known agency in South Carolina, and they were so bad in their paramedic shortage that they were now paying third-party agencies to come in and run basic level 911 calls for them. And on any given day, they only had 4 paramedics to serve a county with a call volume of over 25,000 per year. So it's just not a North Carolina problem, but it's something that sooner or later we're going to have to figure out or lock into place because, call me a traditionalist, but, you don't hire a nurse. You don't send a nurse to school for 2 years to get her ADN just to come out and then go straight to an ambulance. So why do we put a paramedic through what we do there just to send them into a doctor's office. You know, they need
The
to be on.
waste of a skill set.
Exactly. Complete waste of it. I mean, there's no way I would do it other than, you know, I'm at the end of my career and I've got nothing else I can do. But I'm talking 20, 19-year-old kids. That's what they're doing. And it's just pretty rough. And in my opinion, it's doing nothing but hurting us.
So just some quick statistics. The nursing shortage is not going away either. 2033, they're expecting a shortage of over in North Carolina 12,000 nurses. In nationwide for EMS between 2030 is they're expecting to be needing an extra over 40,000 employees. So neither shortage, I believe, is going away anytime soon. But not only with that, physician shortage is going away as well. And I don't even have that number, but I think Dr. Kitch, which is one of our medical advisors, I think he told us that they had a third less physicians going into emergency medicine. So
wow.
Another big shortage there as well.
Wow. Makes you worried about who's going to be taking care of us, right?
Correct. No, healthcare is scary, unfortunately, when you get to that point when you think about that. It is.
To start to wrap some stuff up, sometimes it is scary and we're not sure who to turn to or who can help us out with things. And I feel like if I was making a description for an educational campaign, it would be for best friend. And so who would be your best friend?
Don't fall. David, don't fall for it. Don't fall for it. They asked this. It's a
trap.
trap.
The people want to know.
The two people that run this podcast they're trapped. Don't listen. Don't listen.
We're best
Don't
friends.
even give them your MySpace account. Like, just don't.
Tom.
Well, MySpace, I hadn't heard that one in a minute.
Oh, we talk about it.
John probably still has one.
Wow.
No, I looked the other day. I don't. I wish I did.
Yeah. Thankfully, mine got deactivated.
I'm gonna look mine up real quick.
Wow.
I never had one.
I don't know. I don't know who that would
Don't
be.
do it. Don't fall.
I don't know who would listen to you at this point. I mean, is there anybody that listens to us in EMS? Honestly, outside of EMS.
Yeah, it had to be somebody else EMS. I think at this point. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good question. It's probably a better question than I could even ask, to be honest with you.
Terry, it's not you. I'm sorry.
It's not you, Terry. It's not you, John. If anybody, it's Mark.
You got me stuck on MySpace now.
You're welcome.
Well, the key thing about MySpace was you had to rank your best friends.
You did.
That's true. And you could hurt some feelings real quick.
Oh, you could. Yes. And I know I did.
And that was the intent. Kind of like today, and we've talked about this a little bit amongst ourselves about how much you can hurt somebody's feelings with, blocking them on Facebook or something. And that's an intentful thing, boy. You get Hatfield and McCoy with that.
Oh yeah.
You take the time to block somebody, and you've hurt some feelings.
That's
Terry, did you have MySpace?
Yeah.
I am the only one up here of y'all that did not have MySpace.
Because you didn't have electricity where you lived at.
You just got internet access like 3 years ago. They were still on the party phone. Hoy hoy.
Never, ever got MySpace.
Walter MySpace was his barn. That was his space right there.
Yeah, that was literally his.
He had to rate his animal friends.
I never got one.
And the horse and the donkey.
I don't even know when I got Facebook. Birds. It's been within the last.
Maybe he rated insects too.
Shut up, John.
I don't know. Farming.
Did you have AOL?
I don't know when I got it.
Did you have AOL?
No, I did not have AOL either.
Wait, he would have had to light the lanterns down the street as he walked down.
You had to have a phone, Terry. Of course,
we had a phone. So we dialed ECSU to be able to get internet.
Just know MySpace is still a website. I just looked it up. It's still. I got to figure
out
my login.
An active website.
It is.
Walter still using Lycos.
Dudding, if I find you on MySpace, I'm going to add you, buddy.
But if you find me, let me know, because I'd like to get some of those old pictures.
I don't want any of those pictures on MySpace.
I was about 60 pounds lighter and a whole lot more less gray.
You and me both. Well, David, I appreciate you joining us on the show for this episode, man. I really enjoyed the conversation. We'll do it again sometime.
Yeah, I appreciate you guys. It's a lot of fun. You guys got something good going.